Hey, what's good? It's your boy Mixtape Moth, and today I'm gonna hit y'all with my top 20 underrated rap albums from 1997. Let's get to it. All right, 1997. It was an important year in hip hop. It sort of represented the middle to end phase of the second golden era. You had a lot of different movements all flourishing at this time. On a more commercial level, you had Bad Boy and No Limit dominating the game, but 1997 was also a big year for the underground. Originality, creativity, impressive double albums, and authentic street rap. But today I'm gonna hit y'all with a list of 20 albums from 1997 that I feel are underrated, underappreciated, and slept on. Now, I'm not saying these releases are ultra obscure or anything like that, but they definitely aren't talked about when most people revisit hip hop in 1997. Just so there is no confusion, I wanted to make it clear that I'm not going to discuss the following albums because I feel they weren't underrated. Wu-Tang Forever, Biggie's Life After Death, Bone Thugs is The Art of War, Scarface is The Untouchable, Jay-Z's In My Lifetime Volume 1, Camp Lo's Uptown Saturday Night, Capone and Noreaga is The War Report, The Firm, The Album, Common's One Day It'll All Make Sense, Puffy's No Way Out, and Busta's When Disaster Strikes. I also chose not to cover any compilations or soundtracks. Oh, and one more thing. This is not just a New York list. I made it a point to cover all regions as there was quite a bit to choose from in 1997. But with that being said, let me just jump into this list, y'all. Number 20, Lil Keke, Don't Mess with Texas. All right, this was Houston rapper Lil Keke's debut album. He is one of the original members of the Screwed Up Clique. I feel this was an important Houston album that was not made by a Rap-A-Lot artist. This was an independent release that was looked at as a street classic in Texas. It featured the Houston anthem Southside, which represented the part of town that Lil Keke and several other great rappers come from. The beats on here were very smooth and bass heavy, giving you that distinct Houston flavor. You actually had an early Zero appearance. Now, this album wasn't insane lyrically, but the flows, vibes, and production were all on point. Number 19, NoID, Accept Your Own and Be Yourself. Now, this was the debut album from Chicago producer NoID, but this wasn't a producer compilation. Instead, it was just an actual rap album. Yes, this was the same NoID who has produced for some of your favorite rappers. On this album, he shared the mic with rapper Doug Infinite quite a bit. Now, I can't say NoID was an amazing rapper, but he managed to put together a dope album with great production and lyrics with some introspection. Some standout tracks include State to State featuring Common. Y'all gotta check that one out for sure. We Rock Like So, Fate or Destiny, Mega Live, and Two Steps Behind. Number 18, Boogie Monsters, God Sound. This was the second and final release for the Bronx duo known for their conscious, spiritual, and semi-conspiracy theorist lyrics. These guys were kicking a lot of knowledge over sparse and mellow boom bap beats. It was definitely a thought-provoking listen, but at the time they might have been falsely labeled a Christian rap group due to their heavy spiritual content. A highlight to me was their gritty single, The Beginning of the End. Other standout songs included Say Word featuring Bahamadia, Photographic Memory, and Behold a Pale Horse, which was inspired by William Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse, a book that exposed top government secrets. It was a very popular book in the 90s that was referenced by many rappers. Number 17, Crew, The Dirty 30. So Crew was a South Bronx rap group that was signed to Def Jam and Violator. This was their one and only commercial release as a group. While it may not have gotten a lot of recognition, it was looked at as an important New York rap album. The production was handled by DJ Yogi, who crafted a nice blend of smooth and head-bobbing beats. These guys weren't the dopest lyricists out, but they were creative and entertaining nonetheless. Their personalities and humor definitely stood out on tracks. Some highlights were Just Another Case featuring Slick Rick, which was actually a pretty big single. Recognized with Black Rob, Live at the Tunnel featuring The Lox. Now that was a banger, and the neck snapping, bubbling. Number 16, Big Mike, Still Serious. This was Big Mike's second studio album on Rap-A-Lot Records. While it lacked the attention-grabbing singles that were found on his debut, it was still a good follow-up. On here, Big Mike was giving you very straightforward southern gangster rap over very smooth production. The beats were handled mostly by Mike Dean and N.O. Joe, so there was a lot of that gumbo funk and signature Rap-A-Lot sound to be heard. This was the perfect kind of music to ride out to. I feel Mike Dean laced Big Mike with some fire production. Some standout songs were Southern Dialect, Bourbon and Impala's All a Dream, and Black Lacquer. Number 15, Twista, Adrenaline Rush. This was the third studio album from Chi-Town's rapid fire spitter, Twista. It was actually my introduction to his music as well. This was a very solid body of work. It was produced entirely by the legendary Traxster. What you had was Twista spitting some descriptive street tales about pimping and being a mobster. The legendary Traxster beats had a distinct Chi-Town flavor, but you could also detect influences from Bay Area's mob music, Midwestern G-Funk, Suave House, and the Rap-A-Lot sound at the time. Some standout tracks included Emotions, which was a pretty big single, Overdose, Unsolved Mystery, Corrupt World, and Mobster's Anthem. Number 14, The Lady of Rage, Necessary Roughness. This was The Lady of Rage's debut album and technically the last Death Row album on Interscope. It featured production from Easy Mo B, DJ Premier, and Daz Dillinger. Now, at the time it was released, it did not feature any Dr. Dre production for obvious reasons, but it was still a very solid album thanks to Lady of Rage's confident and fierce presence on the mic. The production was all right, although I really wish it would have had more of that G-Funk sound. Regardless, on the lyrical front, Rage definitely showed improved. Some of my favorite songs were Necessary Roughness. The DJ Premier produced Some Shit and Microphone Pawn Cock. Y'all definitely need to peep those Primo beats, especially Microphone Pawn Cock. And the Daz Dillinger produced Get With The Wickedness. Number 13, Diamond D's Hatred, Passions, and Infidelity. While this was nowhere near as acclaimed as his debut album, Stunts, Blunts, and Hip Hop from 1992, it was a very solid release for 1997. If you love Diamond D and are a big DITC head, then I'm sure that you will dig this album. The Diamond D production on here was crisp, complete with crunchy drums, xylophones, sparkling keys, and of course those crate digging samples. Some highlights were The Hiatus, which was the single Pains and Strife featuring Phife Dawg, Five Fingers of Death, which was the hard-hitting DITC posse cut. This one featuring Busta Rhymes, and the closing song Epilogue. Number 12, Killer Army's Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. This was Killer Army's debut album. They were one of two very talented Wu-Tang affiliate groups in the 90s, the other of course being Sons of Man. I thought this was a very unique album, and I always liked how they related street life to military combat. So there was this heavy militaristic post-Desert Storm theme throughout this. Now, these guys were all dope artists, but the two who stood out the most to me were Killa Sin and Don Pacino, the PR terrorist. The bulk of the production was handled by Fourth Disciple, who unfortunately never receives enough props for his production on Wu-Tang joints. The RZA also came aboard to produce two beats, which were fire. It was a dark listen, but it kept you on your toes. Some standout tracks were Wake Up, Wu, Renegades, Camouflage, Ninjas, and Fair Love and War. Number 11, the Beatnuts, Stone Crazy. This was the Beatnuts' second album. While it was not as highly regarded as their debut, it was a strong follow-up. The production was a little more refined and diverse. I would say sonically, it was a darker album in general, but the party rockin' flows and funky samples were still intact. This album was really a gem if you love sample-based production in hip-hop. While their rhyming was decent, it was their beats and their charisma which made these Beatnuts albums so dope. Some standout tracks included Off the Books featuring Big Pun, which was a summer anthem and mixtape banger. It was actually one of my favorite songs from 1997, period. You also had the ominous N, No, and Find That, as well as the psychedelic Do You Believe and Stone Crazy. Number 10, MJG No More Glory. This was MJG's debut album. Now, of course, MJG is one half of the iconic Memphis rap group 8Ball and MJG. This, in my opinion, was a very consistent, cohesive, and underrated body of work. Ironically, it was considered to actually be unfinished at the time, but it was still a fantastic Southern rap album. T-Mix produced the whole album, which gave it that definitive suave house flavor. The Southern funk backdrops were ideal for MJG to spit his unique and urgent flows. Some highlights for me were Hip Hop Voodoo, That Girl, which was a smooth single, Slippin', Take No Shit featuring Bun B, No More Glory, Hard But Fair, and Middle of the Night. Number 9, KRS-One, I Got Next. This was easily KRS-One's most commercially ambitious project to date. But don't get it twisted, KRS-One still demonstrated why he was one of the nicest rap veterans in 1997. I also feel this was the last really great album from KRS-One as far as it having high replay value. While this had no DJ Premier production like his 1993 and 1995 albums, it was still very well produced. It contained beats from Showbiz, Domingo, DJ Muggs, and KRS-One himself. KRS-One was animated at times, rocking the party, but he was also dropping knowledge like he was conducting a class at the Temple of Hip Hop. Standout songs include Can't Stop, Won't Stop, a dope storytelling track produced by DJ Muggs, The MC, which might be my favorite on the album, I Got Next, Never Had a Gun. This had some dope beat shifts, A Friend produced by Showbiz, and the radio-friendly single Step Into a World. Number 8, Witch Doctor, a SWAT healing ritual. This was one of the most slept on releases coming out of the Dungeon Family Collective. Witch Doctor's lyrics combine street life with the spirit world. Despite the Hustlers' anthem Holiday and the Streetwise Georgia Plains, the majority of Witch Doctor's content was based on themes surrounding spirituality, spells, and voodoo. The production from Organized Noise really fit this Southern gothic aesthetic, as the beats had this backwoods, soulful, and country rap tunes kind of feel. If you liked albums like Soul Food and AT-Aliens, then you should have enjoyed this project a lot. Now, I'm not putting it up there with those two albums, but Witch Doctor's originality combined with the stellar Organized Noise production really made this a strong release. Standout tracks included 7th Floor, The Serengeti, Holiday, 12 Scanner, Georgia Plains, 4 in the Temple, and There's Only One. Number 7, The Alcoholics, Liquidation. This was The Alcoholics' third album, and I felt it was their most polished and anticipated release of the 90s. Tash and J-Ro rapped on the majority of tracks, while E Swift mainly manned the boards. Tash and J-Ro continued to rock the party with their hard-hitting yet complex rhymes. The production was mostly handled by E Swift, but Madlib and Easy Mo B were additional contributors. There was plenty of sonic variety, but I would say the beats tended to have more of an upbeat and funky sound. I think this album had a ton of incredibly dope rhyming and energetic flows that really showcased the great chemistry between the group members. Some highlights for me include Captain Hook, Killing It, which was my favorite track featuring Exhibit, Aw Shit, Funny Style with King T, All Night featuring Keith Murray, which was also a single, and Contents Under Pressure. Number 6, EPMD Back in Business. This was EPMD's reunion album since their breakup after their 1992 release, Business Never Personal. And it showed that they still had it as a duo. Their flows might not have been as sharp as before, but they were able to update their sound to fit with the times. Eric Sermon, who had produced a plethora of fantastic beats in the 90s, did not disappoint on the production front, although he didn't produce the whole album. Some really dope tracks that stood out to me were KIM, Keep It Moving, which was an insanely dope posse cut featuring Def Squad, Richter Scale, The Joint, which was a bass heavy banger and single, Never Seen Before, and Intrigued with Das Effect. Number 5, Lost Boys, Love, Peace, and Nappiness. This was the Lost Boys' second studio album, their first being Legal Drug Money from 1996. Now, Love, Peace, and Nappiness had more of a polished and cleaner aesthetic than their debut. Some people may not have liked this 1997 release for that very reason. The production from Easy Mo B, Big Dog, and DJ Ron G was less boom bap and more keyboard and thick bass production. There were more laid back anthems that seemed more suitable for summertime cookouts than something to lace your Timberlands up tight to. However, on the lyrical tip, the Lost Boys still came through with the raw street stories they were known for. Some standout tracks were Beast from the East, which will go down as one of the top 10 posse cuts of all time, and My Crew, which was a less talked about posse song featuring Cannabis and A+. Number 4, Tracy Lee, Many Faces. Tracy Lee surprised a lot of heads with his debut album, Many Faces. He was a very well-rounded and witty MC who could pretty much do it all. So if you wanted anthems, party records, storytelling, and introspective tracks, he had it all covered. The production sampled from a lot of 70s and 80s R&B and funk records, so that there was a very smooth flavor to a lot of these beats. Some of my favorite songs included The Theme, It's Party Time, which was a very dope commercial party song. Also, Keep Your Hands High featuring Biggie, where he went bar for bar and toe-to-toe with Big, a feat not many could pull off as effectively as Tracy Lee. This was a top 10 song from 1997 without a doubt. Other dope songs included Big Will, On the Edge, Clue, Who Shot LR, and Many Faces. This was a very slept-on release, but it ended up getting more praise later down the road than it did in 1997. Number 3, DJ Muggs presents Soul Assassins Volume 1. So this was DJ Muggs' debut album. This served pretty much as a compilation, but I would still consider it an album. In 1997, DJ Muggs was in his prime as a producer. In my opinion, he has yet to surpass this body of work. I feel like he was the West Coast equivalent to the RZA and Havoc at this time, but he just didn't get the credit. But this was a very cohesive and well put together project with haunting skits and eerie transitions. The whole listening experience was cinematic. There were some really incredible MCs featured on this, like Goody Mob, RZA, GZA, Cypress Hill, The Darkman, MC8, KRS-One, and Mobb Deep. Easily, my favorite track was Decisions by Goody Mob. Y'all definitely gotta peep that CeeLo verse. Other really dope songs were GZA's and RZA's Third World, The Darkman's Devil in a Blue Dress, KRS-One's Move Ahead, and Mobb Deep's It Could Happen to You. Number 2, Royal Flush, Ghetto Millionaire. This Royal Flush debut album was almost as good as The War Report for me. It was a street classic, an album that was for the hustlers and drug dealers who appreciated New York hip hop. This had production from The Beat Miners, LES, High Tech, Buck Wild, and Easy LP. I would say that this was just as strong a debut as Mike Geronimo's The Natural from 1995. Some standout songs were Ice Down Medallions, which was a street anthem at the time, a song that really epitomized the lifestyle of a hustler rocking fly medallions. I also really like Can't Help It, Idiotic Shines with Mike Geronimo, moving on your weak production, although the song was older and family problems. Worldwide was a mixtape banger from 1996 that I guess you could say played a part in escalating the East and West Coast feud. Additionally, I really dug the feel-good anthem Regulate, as well as the pensive closing song Dead Letter. And that brings us to my top underrated album from 1997, and that's OC Jules. This was my favorite album from OC and one of my top 3 DITC solo releases of all time. While not as critically acclaimed as his debut album, which featured gems like Time's Up and Born to Live, it was a better produced album in my opinion. Not as raw, but a lot more focused and complete of a body of work with top-notch instrumentals. You had crispy production from Buck Wild to Beatminers, Showbiz, Lord Finesse, and DJ Premier. OC is really the epitome of an unsung MC who could go in any bag at any moment. If you are a fan of DITC, this is a must-have album. I would honestly put this project up there with Camp Lo's Uptown Saturday Night, Biggie-Life After Death, CNN The War Report, and Wu-Tang Forever as my favorite releases from 1997. Some standout songs were My World, produced by DJ Premier, War Games, featuring Pharaoh Monch, Dangerous with Big L, his smooth single Far From Yours, Mug featuring Freddie Fox, also produced by Primo, and the Lord Finesse produced Jules. So those were my top 20 underrated hip hop albums from 1997. Please leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, and hit that like button. It's your boy, Mixtape Moth. I'm signing out, but as always, it's peace and blessings. Top 20 underrated rap albums from 1997. 1.